Welcome to Empty Nest Creations. My name is Wendy. I'm the owner and creator here. And today I have a couple of thrift flips that we're going to do using IOD paint inlays. So let's get into project one. So this first project is a tin wall hanging that has a vase. I thought this would be a perfect project to try out a paint inlay. We're going to get started painting, and I'm just using Country Chic chalk paint on this one. This is in the color Crinoline. It's just a nice creamy white color. And I wanted to use chalk paint first to just see how it worked. This is my first time using a paint inlay. I'm going to give this a good coat of paint. And so I want to make sure that my paint goes on nice and smooth here. And it takes 2 good coats to get a good coverage on this metal. This is my first time using the IOD paint inlays. And these projects didn't turn out perfect, but I think they look pretty good. The paint inlays were really easy to use. I think my biggest issue was getting them centered on the project. So here I'm showing you, I'm using the IOD pink Fleur inlay. And these are really pretty. They have some yellow and pink on them. So I'm putting on another layer of the paint. I've wet that inlay, and then I'm going to just lay it down in the paint and smooth it out with my fingers. Spritz it with some water. And I'm just rubbing it to make sure that all of those images are making good contact with that paint. And then I'm just dabbing off some of that excess water. And then we're going to set it aside and let it dry. When it's dry completely, you'll see here it's turned kind of white again. And I felt it to just make sure it was good and dry. And now I'm misting it with that water again. I'm going to kind of dab the excess water off. This is chalk paint, so I don't want to get water all over the piece. But you want to make sure your inlay is wet and let it sit for about 30 seconds or so. And make sure the whole thing is wet. That way it will release from your project. And you're going to see here that some of it transferred really, really well. And at the top, for some reason, it didn't transfer as well. I'm not sure why that was. But it looks very vintage, very worn. And I'm going to just go with that for this project. Now, I do take this outside once it's dry and give it a spray of clear matte sealer. That was just because I was afraid to use a brush to put a sealer on it. But you do need to seal it in. Now, here I'm just distressing it a little bit. I want the rest of the project to match the distressed image. And I'm using Country Chic wax in clear, and I'm just going to cover the entire thing. Now I have already sealed the inlay with that spray sealer so it won't smear, and I'm just coming in and covering the whole thing with wax. Brushing it on and then buffing it in. I love the way wax makes a project feel. And here I am putting the bottle back in there. This is really, really cute. If you look closely, you'll see that the image is not centered, but the bottle is not centered either. When they welded those little straps on, they're kind of off-center a little bit, but that's okay. I think it turned out really well. So we're going to move on to project 2. And I'm using Country Chic paint again. These are just some little wood trays. And I'm using the chalk paint in the color Elegance. This is a really pretty blue color. And again, I'm going to give this 2 good coats on the front and the back. And then we're going to use those inlays from that same packet. In all of these projects, I'll be using that same IOD inlay packet. But these little trays are great for putting on a dresser to hold your rings, your jewelry, anything like that, in your entryway to hold your keys or change. So I'm just going to give it 2 good coats, and of course I'm drying in between coats. I want to make sure it's good and dry, and I want to move on quickly. So those heat guns work really, really well. And this style is made for crafting, so it doesn't get super, super hot. So here I've got 2 inlays, and these are kind of mirror images of one another. The flowers are facing in different directions. So again, spritzing that inlay, adding a layer of paint, and then laying it face down into the paint. You want to make sure your grid side is up. And then just setting it aside to let it dry. Now they're completely dry, so I'm going to wet them again. And then just peel that up. These turned out really well. You want to lay your transfers or your inlays aside and let them dry because you can use them again. And so I just let them dry flat, and then just put them back in the package so you can use them again later. Now this one I had a little difficulty getting that edge, so I just used a little razor blade to lift that edge of that paper up. And then again, these turned out really pretty. I did use a spray sealer again on these, and then waxed them. I think they turned out really pretty. I did go back in and distress the edges a little bit, just to kind of make it match those distressed images. I think these turned out really pretty. That yellow and pink go really well with that blue. So on to project 3. I have this wooden shelf, and we're going to again paint this white. This time I am using the Silk all-in-one paint. I wanted to try that out and see how it works. I like this paint a lot. It has a primer and a sealer built in, and it covers really, really well on this dark wood. This is the color Oyster, so it's kind of a white, has a little bit of gray tint to it. And I'm just going to give this piece 2 good coats of paint. I'm using my heat tool to dry in between. Now this one I did have a little more difficulty with the inlays, and it's because of the way I did them. So I cut out a center flower, and then I cut out a frame, and because I cut the frame out, you see there it's got a hole in the middle. It was a little more difficult to get it laid down, so you'll see that in just a moment. I'm wetting it again here, and then I'm gonna lay that down, and you can see it's a little more difficult to get it kind of to lay flat and get it straight, but I did get it to work. And then I sprayed it again with water, dabbing off the excess, and I'm going to let that dry. I put a little one up at the top because I just thought it looked kind of empty. Then you're going to see here, we're going to lift those off. And these worked really, really well on this all-in-one paint. The images were less distressed on here. They looked a little more crisp. And so again, I sprayed this one with a spray sealer, and then went back in once that was dry, and used wax to seal in the whole piece. Now the paint does not need to be sealed, but the inlays do. So I thought this turned out really, really pretty. And we're going to move on to our next project. And this one I did a little bit different. So these are some coasters that I bought at the thrift store. Now this one of these here was a little broken on the top, so I just used some wood glue and push that back together, put a little clamp on it, and then let that dry real well. And you can't even tell that it was broken. These have a cork backing, and I didn't want to get any paint on those, so I'm covering the backs with some tape just to protect that cork. These were really neat. They have a stand that they sit on, and I've never seen any like these. So I thought they were really, really cool. I can't remember how much I paid for them, but it wasn't a whole lot. And so I'm just taping them, and now I'm going to sand the tops. I want to make sure that paint image is flattened out so we don't see that in our final project. And so I'm just using some 220 grit sandpaper to just kind of smooth those out. This wood is kind of rough anyway, but I want to make sure that those images aren't showing. And again, we're using that silk paint in the color Oyster. And I'm going to give these 2 good coats of paint to make sure we cover up all of that black. These were really easy to paint. So if you enjoy this kind of content, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel. If you've already subscribed, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And if you're enjoying these videos, please leave me a comment below and let me know your thoughts. Just any comment really helps my channel to grow. And I'm really trying to get to 500 subscribers. So I know that's a small goal, but if you would be willing to subscribe, I'd really, really appreciate that. So here I'm just going in and making sure that the inside of that little hole is painted as well. And now I'm going to dry them real quick. And move on to that second coat. And again, this paint covers really, really well. It's covering that black really nicely. I wish I could paint this fast. Okay, so here I've picked out some inlays. And there's 2 that are smaller heart shapes and 2 that are the larger. And so I'm just misting those, laying up another layer of paint down, and then laying it on top. I use a paper towel to just press it into that paint really well and make sure that it's got good contact with that paint. That's going to ensure that the paint from the inlay connects with that paint and is able to dry properly onto the paint. So these smaller pieces were much easier to work with. Here you can see I'm going to use my heat tool to dry these. And once they're dry, I'm going to spritz them again with water. And then just peel that inlay off. Now here you see I'm rubbing. There is a little line. You can see where the paper inlay was. And so I was trying to rub that off, but with this all-in-one paint, that didn't work. So with the chalk paint, you can kind of rub it in and get rid of that line. But this one, I'm showing you here those lines. So what I did was I just took some of the paint and I went in and kind of stippled around those lines to kind of blend it in and make it less noticeable. On these, it was very noticeable, that little line from where the paper inlay was. So I just went through on all of these and stippled around there, and then dried it. And that kind of covered that up. And so if you have that problem, that's a good fix for that. Now on these, I wanted to make sure that they were sealed really well. These are coasters. And so if you put your drink on it, I wanted to make sure that moisture is not going to get into that wood and ruin your coasters. So I wanted to use a sealer on these that would you make them a little more waterproof. And so I used a polyacrylic brush on sealer. And what I should have done was spray them with that spray sealer first, and then come back in and brush them. But I didn't do that. I went straight in with the brush. And so you'll see on some of these that the paint inlay did smear a little bit. These are paint, and so you want to be really careful. I know other people brush on sealers and they don't have any issues, but I did have just a little bit of bleeding. So I think next time I will go out and spray them first, and then come back in and put the polyacrylic on. I did put 2 coats of polyacrylic on just to make sure that they were sealed, and again, water resistant, so that whoever gets these will be able to use them as coasters. But I thought they turned out really cute. The bleeding is not bad, and it kind of lends itself to that vintage kind of look. But they turned out really nice. So we're finishing up here, and I'll show you what they look like when they're all done. Here they are on their stand. I think they turned out really, really cute. I love the yellow and the pink on these. So let me know your thoughts. If you stayed for the whole video, leave me a heart emoji in the comments, so that I know that you watched to the end. And again, thank you so much for spending your time with me. If you like this video, consider giving it a thumbs up. Again, I'll see you in the next video.